Hi there, it's Jackie Schomburg-Abstract. Today I did some painting outside, which I don't think I've done since 8th grade art class, but I gave it a shot. And I don't really work with actual things to draw, so I attempted to do some realistic-ish, emphasis on the ish, paintings with my paints outside. And then I took those paintings, which most of them did not feel like me. But I hit the two that felt most like me and used those to make a collage that really feels like me. So I'm going to take you through the entire process, start to finish, from going outside, getting my paints together, painting 6 different, backyard inspired paintings. There's really not a whole lot of color out here in Chicago just yet, so it's still very much early spring. There's lots of green grass, there's lots of green plants coming up, and lots of sticks. So as you can see behind me, the trees don't have their leaves yet. Lots of brown, lots of green. So I improvised a bit with a couple colors just to brighten things up because I couldn't take it, just the green and brown, for all that long. And I allowed myself to be very vulnerable because painting outside and doing things that I don't normally do felt very vulnerable. I felt like I was in 5th grade art class and just like, oh my gosh, this is awkward. But I did it, and I'm very proud of myself for doing it. And taking those pieces then, those kind of backyard landscapes, I'll call them very loosely, and collaging them into something new that really feels like me was a great way to make something new, a new starting point for my collage. So you don't have to just use magazines. You don't need to be using just jelly plate things. You can go paint something, and if it doesn't turn out well, oh well, you've got great collage material. All right, hope you enjoy it, and stick around to the very end because I'll show you my 2 favorites in all their glory. So here it is. Here's my backyard. Not the most picturesque landscape opportunity. However, it gave me the privacy of being in my backyard, so I didn't have to feel super vulnerable having other people watch me. For whatever reason, this is going to sound funny to people who watch my videos, but I do not like it when people watch me make art. Which is kind of ridiculous as I'm saying that because that's what I literally am making videos on. However, I don't have to post a video, right? So if I'm making something that's turning out awful or I'm, embarrassed by or anything else, I don't have to post that video. And it gives me an opportunity to at least know that there's a buffer between what I'm making and knowing that you guys are not watching it over my shoulder, except for alive. So I guess I'm getting better at people watching me make art. But someone watching me make art in person, like looking over my shoulder, if I was at a park or something like that, was too much for me. So this time I stuck to my backyard and painted my own grass. I am using some watercolor paper. It's pretty big. I think it's like 12 by 16-ish. And I brought all my paints outside. It was a gorgeous sunny day. And what I learned very quickly, which is totally obvious once I thought about it, the paint on my palette, even though I have kind of a stay wet, do it yourself, stay wet palette, dried so fast. The paint dried so fast. Again, it should have been obvious because it's acrylic paint, which dries fast normally. That was a lesson for me. Sunshine plus paint equals needing to add lots of water. Because everything in my yard right now is shades of brown and green, I focused on the brown and the green and just using different shades and lots of the blue and green especially. I didn't really know. So I'm not a landscape painter, right? I think we all know this. I sometimes make abstracted landscapes, but they're not based on any realistic place for the most part. If they are, it's because I've zoomed way into a rock or something. Um, so doing this exercise in general was way out of my comfort zone, but I wanted to give it a try. Um, it was very exciting is not the right word, because for the most part I was unhappy with what was appearing on my page, at least at first. Um, but it felt like an adventure because it was an adventure. So the experimentation aspect of it was a lot of fun. And because I let myself just be bad at it, it was even more fun. I'm a perfectionist at times, and I'm getting better at it, at not being a perfectionist. But whenever I get in my head about that, I try to remember that it's way more fun to do the thing than to not do the thing because you can't do it as well as you want to. So if you also tend toward the perfectionistic side of wanting to do everything great or not do it at all, I would encourage you to try something that you haven't done before and just let yourself be bad at it. And bad doesn't mean you've failed or anything else. You're allowed to be bad. You're allowed to do something just because it's fun, even if you're not good at it. So that's what I did. This is some raw umber brown. I use a lot of water to try to get some sort of texture. Well, not texture, just some depth actually. Now for this is one of the ones that I thought was most like me, most like the art that I recognize as my own. I decided that I would kind of focus in on the mulch. So those orb shapes are actually just me magnifying pieces of mulch, like to make them huge compared to what they normally are. And having those shapes that way felt much more familiar and much more enjoyable to me. And I'm using a knitting needle now to kind of carve into that wet paint. I was trying to use a variety of different tools for these. So I have brushes, I have palette knives, I have my color shaper as always, and my knitting needle to carve through. And it was a lot of fun just to play. I think because I was adding a lot of water, my paint was very thin. Again, obvious now that I say it out loud. So the page that I actually ended up making, it looked more, it looked very similar to like watercolor versus acrylic paint. It was not thick at all. These are some gelatos. I'm not sure what they are technically made out of, but they're very creamy, like a very creamy pastel or crayon. And they're water soluble. So it was a very sunny day with some, kind of nondescript gray. These lines initially I meant to represent my fence. And there's a bush to the side and a big old pine tree growing in my neighbor's yard. And then I went kind of way far out and tried to turn it into my bench, which has a curved top. This is not my favorite. But again, I allowed myself a chance to try something new and be bad at it. And I nailed it on this one. But even still, I had a lot of fun painting it. I added some, what is that? Why can't I think of the word? Nico Azo Gold. Quinacridone Gold. That's what I'm looking for. We have these very tree-like bushes. And I was looking right at one, so I figured I'd put that in there and just pretend it was green already. So part of what I wanted to do with this is to try doing making landscapes in my backyard. And not necessarily to have them at all be realistic, just to see what happened. Try to get I don't feel like I adequately got the feel of my backyard in any way. So I would love to say that I did. I don't feel that way. Um, but I guess that was kind of the goal, to get the spirit of the thing rather than making it look realistic. However, I did end up with a couple that I liked, and in a little bit I will take those and turn them into a collage and mixed media piece that feels much more like my own art. But in this case, I'm making the collage paper by painting outside in my backyard rather than using a jelly plate, rather than using magazine pages. I'm just using a painting as a starting point. I know the angle's not too great. I didn't have my fancy overhead set up outside like I do in my studio. And I have a very short tripod. In the interest of trying new things to make marks, I was using the knitting needle here to try and get some of those black marks in. This color palette is also very different than my normal color palette, which was also kind of fun. It is liberating to try something brand new, because you're not bound by any of the things that you normally consider. So I wasn't bound by any color palette. I was just using what was around me. Then I added some extra things like this gold in the corner and these orange tiny flower buds that did not exist in real life. But I wanted a little bit more oomph in here. All in all, I did 6 quick paintings outside. more quinacridone gold here just to try something new with the warmth of the fence and some yellow. And trying to do 6 quickly helped because it helped me just to keep going and not thinking too much. This one felt a lot like fall because of the colors that I chose. Not my intention. But I'm glad I did 6. If I had only done 1, I would have been very sad because I don't know. I just would have thought that that was my whole experience. But doing 6, you can see, well, I don't know if you can see, but I definitely have some that are favorites and some that aren't. So these are the finished ones as far as they got during the actual session outside. And in a minute, I will take 2 of them and cut them up and add some more collage to make them a finished mixed media piece. All right, so back inside now. These are the 2 I used. The one with the orbs really felt a lot more like me. I wanted to add more mark making before I cut it up. So I'm taking a blue colored pencil right here, black China marker, and a white China marker. I just wanted to make it have some harder edges in there, right? It was all very soft and very watercolory. I wanted to have some distinct line work. It helps to have a darker tone as well, or a darker value. You can see I'm hesitating, not really sure what to do next. Those are all my gelatos in there. Adding some different blues. You'll notice that there's a lot of trial and error here. And there's a lot of experimenting to see if I like things in different places as far as collage paper goes. So here I am just kind of choosing the sections that I like, that I want to keep from these collages, or from the paintings, to then collage. Because it was so new, I couldn't rely on my regular, I don't know if they're tricks, but my regular kind of system and my regular process. And because of that, there was a lot of trial and error to see what I liked and didn't like. And having the color palette so different, that also changed the collage pieces that I chose to work with. But I really like these pieces that I chose. So I'm just using PVC glue right now. Excuse me, PVA, not PVC. PVC is pipe. PVA glue. I didn't want to use my gloss medium because I usually do that over the top as well. And some of these things are water soluble. I didn't want them to smear. I feel like already it starts feeling more like me. Just adding some familiar collage pieces, some familiar marks. So even if you go way outside your comfort zone and try something very, very different than your normal style, that doesn't mean you can't incorporate it to your current work. And it really gives you a creative workout, or gave me a creative workout, to find ways to make it successful and feel like me. Just pulling out pieces that I wanted to try on. Both pieces felt very light from a value perspective, so I knew I wanted to use something dark to ground things a bit more. Really like how that worked. Changed the focus, but the outline of the leaves still kept some orb shape. So it's different, but also ties in very nicely. Black and white stripes. Check, check. I love a good black and white stripe. So the left side still felt very ethereal to me. Wanted to ground that a bit more too. This piece helped, but still some work to do. I had so much fun making these. Starting from a different point, using these watercolory, landscapey things, paintings, in a totally different color palette than I normally work in. It was really fun. I highly recommend you go outside your comfort zone and disrupt your process for a day, for an hour, for 20 minutes, and start in a different place than you normally do and see what that brings into your art. I can always tell when I'm not sure what I'm doing if I go back to my tiny scraps. Because in this case, I was just looking for anything that would inspire me. Changed my mind on this, on the green gold. So this I liked because this was different than anything else I had added. The repetition of those 3 orbs, and then the big one, very opaque, very different, more heavy than the smaller outlined orbs down at the bottom. Gelato's just bringing out some more of the spring green. I'm just looking for some finishing touches for something that's going to be eye-catching. And it wasn't that. Spoiler alert. And then I saw it. It was the red. That's what I was missing. Just a little punch. And that's where I ended up. These are the 2 finished pieces. If you haven't subscribed yet, I would love to have you come back and watch some more. Take care.